See you in the hot seat wasn't there yet.
Hello and welcome to Your Dad Learns StarCraft 2. I would like to talk about build orders and openers today, in particular. And I'll probably be glancing down. I've got some notes written down, so I'll be glancing at those. So what are build orders and openers? Why are they important? And they're basically, they give you a focus and they give you a plan, which having a plan is very important in StarCraft 2 because you're trying to do stuff as efficiently as possible. StarCraft 2 is by far a game of efficiency, and I'd say efficiency first and strategy second in most cases. So these also, build orders and openers also empower the way that you want to play the game. You don't have to follow a specific pattern to playing the game. You can always make your own build and play the game the way you want to. And that just comes down to figuring out, at least in my case, I'd figure out by reverse engineering what you want to do. So if I want to make a whole lot of Hydralisks and try to win the game that way, I should first go into a custom game, is what I'd probably do, and figure out just how can I make Hydralisks as fast as possible. Then look at the replay and find out where I have spots I could either improve in my build and how I played that to get Hydralisks out as soon as possible. And then look at where it's weak to other common builds and other common openers, so I can start to plug those holes and adjust my build so that I can get to the game plan that I want to do the way that I want to. So that's an important thing to remember. Builds and openers, they're not something you have to follow all the time, but they do empower you to play the game how you want to. So, build orders, that's basically your game plan. If you're following a build order, it's pretty much telling you what you want to do step by step, how you want to transition into the game, and how you want to win the game. An opener is just kind of, to me, I look at an opener as a declaration of intent. It's kind of saying, okay, this is how I'm going to start, and that lets you know, am I going to be more aggressive? Am I going to be more economic focused? Am I going to be more defensive? How do I want to open and start the game? So with that said, you can think of a build opener as a build order as how you're going to play the game, and your opener is just kind of the foundation that you want to build your game on. And you can always transition out of either of these, and a transition just comes from looking at the state of the game and then adapting to that state. So if you plan to open in a really economic way, and then you notice that your opponent has made some army units and is coming across the map to attack you, you probably want to transition out of making your economy and making your workers and not having defense into building some way to live by the time your opponent gets to you, so they don't just kill you and end the game right there. So with that said, let's look at a build order and see how exactly you read build orders. Alright, so first off, this is a build order. I could have just written my own down, that'd be fine. But this is one taken from SC2 Swarm, so StarCraft2Swarm.com, which is, it's a good resource for finding, information on Zerg units and tactics and StarCraft information that's still fairly active. They usually put stuff out at a decent interval. So, there's 3 different ways that you're primarily going to read a build order. The first is going to be based on supply count, which would be these numbers here. So that's 13 supply, 16 supply. The second is going to be event-based. So when something happens, like this here, 100%, your first inject. So when your first inject is complete, and they also tell you a time, you're going to do something. And then time-based. At this time, you should do a thing. So just go over a little bit of this. Supply 13, Overlord. So the thing is, you start with 12 workers. So everyone starts with 12 supply. So as you're reading a build, you need to keep in mind that the person making the build is not going to say, okay, 12 supply, make a worker. Okay, 13, make your overlord. 14 supply, make a worker. 15 supply, make a worker. They're going to assume that you're making workers constantly until somewhere in the build it will tell you stop making workers. So unless they tell you to do something else, you're making workers. So when you're at 13 supply, you make an overlord. When you're at 16 supply, you're going to make a hatchery. And it tells you at 16 supply, you pull a drone from your mineral line when you have about 200 minerals. And if you're going to make a hatchery, you're going to go to your natural expansion, build a hatchery. 18 supply, you're going to make your Vespian geyser gas. And 17 supply, make your spawning pool. And this tells you your 17th drone. So actually your 17th supply, you're going to rally to your gas. And your 18th drone, you're going to rally to wherever you want to build your spawning pool. Then it tells you to saturate gas by rallying the next 3 drones. So next 3 workers you make are going to gas. At 20, you make an overlord, also at 20, so you know between these 2 things you're not making workers. Make 2 queens, make 4 lings. I believe this means 4 individual ling units, not 4 larvae worth of lings, which would be 8 zerglings. The standards just use 2 larvae, have 4 zerglings, and that can hold most things off. At 60 gas, so that's an event. When you get up to 60 gas, you pull 2 drones off of your gas and put them on minerals. 20 supply, 3rd hatchery. 29 supply, make a 3rd queen at your main base. And when you start making this queen, you're going to send your zerglings, because this is assuming you're against ZVT, so Z is for Zerg, T is for Terran. Assuming you're against a Terran, they're going to send a Reaper to your base at some point. So they're going to tell you, send your zerglings to your main base, and send your queens to your natural base, just for defense. And you can probably get the rest from there. 31 supply, Magbog boost, overlord. When your first inject happens, when it gives you your first little burst of larva, 2 of those you're going to make, and you're going to rally into your gas. You're going to put them back on gas production. Just 2 of them. And then you're going to make drones, get an overlord. At 42, get a 4th queen at your natural base. At 330, you want to send your overlord to scout their base, their main base. They don't tell you, the first overlord you start with the game with, you usually send over to your opponent's, around your opponent's base. So this would be the one, at the beginning of the game, they don't tell you on this build. Probably because it's so common, they just forgot to mention it. You send your overlord across and hide it somewhere, and at 330, you go and you see what your opponent's making. So you have that information to know how you're going to proceed once this opener is done. This overlord will tell you how to proceed. So 44, make another queen at your main, use this to place a tumor at your base. Then 46 overlord, and when your 3rd hatchery is made, you make a 6th queen. And that's it. And that's just the opener. Really, the rest of this guide, if you go and check it out, they tell you what to do based on what your overlord sees and what you think your opponent is doing, which can be good and can be bad. It's always good to know what your opponent's doing. But on a different video, I'm going to make about strategy. I'm going to talk about reacting to your opponent, and specifically reacting to your opponent when you're not in a very high league. If you're not a very high MMR player, it basically boils down to people aren't always predictable at a very low level. They might just be winging it, in which case you're preparing for stuff that probably is not going to happen. But that's how you read a build order. Pretty easy, pretty simple, but I've seen that question posted quite a bit on forums by new players, so this is just another answer to let you know how to do that. Next, we're going to talk about openers and see some videos on that. And all of these videos are going to be shown on the same map. That way, it's just easier to compare the builds because they're on the same map, so there's less random info. The first build we're going to be looking at is a 12 pool. It's actually a 13 extractor 12 pool. And this is probably the most aggressive of an opening the Zerg can do. It's also the weakest economical opening, which just means you're not going to be building your economy. So first you're going to make a drone. At 12 you make a drone, so at 13 you make your extractor. And at 12 you're going to make your pool. That's why the build is called 12 pool. You're going to make your spawning pool. So as soon as you have 200 minerals, make your spawning pool. And now I'm going to make a drone. And you're just going to keep making drones and send them to your extractor. And this is because you want to get your metabolic speed as quick as you can. In fact, if you wanted to, you could have pulled drones as soon as this was made and started getting gas and had these ones just go keep getting minerals. So at 14, you make your overlord. The reason metabolic boost is important is because it lets you reinforce your attack. You're going pool first, so you're going unit production, army production first. So you're going to be aggressive. If you don't plan to be ultra aggressive, this is not the build you're going to do. So as soon as pool pops out, make a queen, make your 6 zerglings. I actually rally the eggs. You see that switched? That's the rally lines. I'm putting it to my opponent's natural. I have my base rallied here. I should really have it rallied over here, so I don't have to try to manually move my units every time. It's just more efficient that way. So my zerglings are made, and they're running over to where I rallied them. And you'll probably see how long it's taken them to get across the map. That's what metabolic boost is for. They'll get across the map like twice as fast once that's done. So as soon as my queen's spawned, it vomits on my base, injects it, so I can have more larvae to be making units with. I make an overlord to try not to get supply blocked, and I'm now attacking. And I'm bringing more units over, and that's all I'm going to be doing now is just attacking into the enemy. And this opener it's an opener, but it's also very close to being a build order. So I'm against another Zerg in AI, actually. They always start on one base, build their stuff kind of early. So they're attacking. I've got 6 more lings in. And oh, is their queen gonna die? Yeah. Now metamorphosis is finished. They have wings. I'm like Red Bull. I'm so fast. And now I'm reinforcing my base even more, or reinforcing my attack force. And that's it. You might see how much minerals I'm floating. So at this point, I don't need all this gas. I could have had these guys mining on minerals. I could make one of them to make a hatchery and transition into something else. I could make a lair, I could make a roach warren. I could transition from this if I want to. And it shouldn't hurt me too much if it's in a state like this. So even if they defend everything I'm doing, my opponent has slightly more stuff than me, but they don't have a second base. Neither do I. So the game state's pretty even. So if this doesn't win you the game, which actually this push right now is going to win me the game, but if it doesn't, you can still transition out of this. Based on what the game state is, you're probably not even too far behind. You might be, but you might not be. If this goes horribly wrong and you mess up your timings, so you just get there way too late, then you could be behind. But at this point, you're not. And I want to jump back to a certain part of the video to point out one thing. This is when I've reached my opponent's natural. 2 minutes, 2 seconds on this map. If I don't build gas, I get here about 5 to 7 seconds quicker, but my reinforcements are slower. I just want to point out this particular time because this is the time in the other builds if you're against another Zerg player, or if you're just playing against a Zerg. On this map at least, all maps are fairly similar in size, but not quite. so the times vary. But on this map, this is kind of the soonest you can expect an attack, around the 2-minute mark. And that's important to note if you're making your own build. So now let's move on to the next opener. Alright, so this is the standard 17 hatch gas pool. You're going to start out by making a drone. And your next larva, your 13 supply, you're going to make an overlord. Now this is standard because you can generally go this build and you should be able to defend against anything your opponent throws at you as long as you react accordingly. I made another drone at 14. As soon as that overlord comes out, I'm making more drones. As soon as it pops, you can make 2. Your third will be shortly on the way, which will be your 17th drone. That 17th drone rallies down to where you're going to make your base. Another larva comes out, you make another drone, rally them next to your gas. By the time the drone gets to the base, you're ready to build your hatchery. So start that up. This guy will be spawning. Make another drone. Make your extractor. And this drone's going to rally over here because that's where I'm going to build my spawning pool. And at this point, I'm not making a drone with this larva because I want to build my spawning pool as quick as possible. So after the spawning pool, that's when you go back into drone production. And you can bring these drones right to your Vespene geyser. And the point of this is because, yet again, you want to make metabolic boost as soon as you hit 100 gas. Metabolic boost is a very important upgrade for a Zerg. It makes those Zerglings go from being pretty slow and not fairly useful to being, I think, the fastest unit in the game. Very good for defense, very good for offense, just very good for scouting, very good all around. It's an important upgrade. So at 19, I made an overlord, then started making another drone. This one I made a drone. Generally when the pool comes out, you actually want to make a queen like I did, but this should be a Zergling. And I'm moving my extra drones from my 1 mineral line over here. So this should actually be a Zergling down here. As soon as my second base is made, I made 1 Zergling and start another queen, 100 gas, start metabolic boost. And let's pause right here. So that's 232 of both of them being made. Now let's actually go back just a tiny bit to the 2-minute mark and let's see what we look like. So 2-minute mark. My pool is just about to be made, so I can actually start making a Zergling right now. Zerglings take 17 seconds. That's what this, I can't show because as soon as I move my cursor, it'll change, but that little green thing on the screen, it shows 100 minerals, then shows that green thing with an 18 next to it. That means that takes 18 seconds for Overlord to morph, 17 seconds for a Zergling, and it requires a spawning pool. So I now have a spawning pool. So at 202 when they're showing up, I could be making my Zergling right now. In 17 seconds I'll be out to defend. And I'm going to be making my queen, as you saw earlier. So, and this will be done in just a few seconds. As soon as that pops, I should be making another queen right there and some Zerglings. So by the time this pops, I could in 5 seconds have my first set of 2 Zerglings out. That's actually what this drone would be my Zerglings. And I could be defending, and my base would just been under attack for, you know, about 15 seconds, 17 seconds, something like that, by 6 Zerglings before I start making my production, which you can defend, especially because you'll have a second hatchery. If you can defend that so they don't end up killing it, you can start making Zerglings from that, queens, make some Zerglings, queens from here until you overcome their attacking you, and you can keep building up your economy. And that's kind of how you would defend it. They can't get their queens across the map to help attack. You can stay even on Zergling production with them to defend. You can make a spine crawler or more static defense if you want. And you basically, they get a little bit of free time attacking you, but the loss usually isn't that heavy as long as you execute this build efficiently and on time. And from then on, after you have your standard 4 Zerglings and 2 queens, which we'll pause and show how that usually goes. Okay, so the first queen comes out. I went low past it because I was going at ×8. But the first queen comes out, you inject your main base, pretty much always. The second queen, when it comes out, you can either inject your natural, or you can put a creep tumor down. Injecting your natural lets you have access to 3 more larvae faster. Putting creep tumor down spreads your creep, and if you plan on making another base, like if we watch this, I'm going to make a 3rd base there. It lets you get creep connected to your 3rd base faster, which lets you defend easier. So that's all style. That's all preference. So that's the standard build. You'll see that a lot. So let's see what a slight variation on that looks like. Alright, so this is very close to the standard. It is a 17 pool hatch gas instead of a hatch gas pool. So it's going to start off the same way. Make a drone, make an overlord at 13, then you're going to drone up until you get to 17. So I just sped up a bit, and your 17th one goes to make a pool, and your next drone you make is going to rally to make your hatchery. Now this adaptation is so that you can get your initial queen and zerglings out faster. That's all this is for. This would be in case you're worried about early game aggression. I now have my other drone being made. It'll probably rally to my geyser. Yep. So this is if you're worried about early game aggression, and if you're worried about defending that, or defending maybe a early Reaper from a Terran, or some early Zerglings. Say your opponent's doing that 12 pool and you expect them to show up in about less than half a minute. You've now got your pool, you're making some Zerglings, you're making a queen. And with your next larva, if you wanted, I end up making a drone, I believe, or overlord, because I made drones to go in here and go here. You could have made, instead of these extra drones, you could have made more Zerglings. And right now, 204, they've already hatched and they've actually walked all the way down here. You could have, based on if you didn't make 2 drones, if you'd saved those and made 2 more Zergling eggs, when they're showing up with their 6 Zerglings, you could be showing up with your own 6 Zerglings to defend. And your queen is 10 seconds away from being born. So you can start defense, you can have your queen pop out during that defense, inject your base, and walk down to help defend down here. Or walk over here to stop them from getting up to the ramp so easy. So queen's born, she injects, and I just put her right here, but if you are getting attacked, you could walk down to this base. This base is born, you make a queen. I make another Zergling just how to have it. And this base could be making another queen, which I just do. And that's really the main difference in this build. You're still getting your metabolic boost at 100. And all you sacrificed a little bit of economy. You could have more money right now. You could have had your hatchery built a little bit sooner, and you could have been making more units, more drones, more larvae, spinning it a little bit faster. But this is to be safer. So honestly, if you're playing against another Zerg player, and you don't want to go with a 12 pool all-out aggression build, this is not a bad way to start, because it allows you to have your Zerglings out to defend with just as much as what your opponent's going to attack with initially, and still be able to transition smoothly into a macro game. You don't have to sacrifice your economy, you don't have to sacrifice your expansion, don't really have to sacrifice anything. So it's a very safe opener that just avoids that about 15 to 17 seconds of your opponent being able to attack you while you don't have defenses up. So there you have it. Not a bad build or a bad option for defending against another Zerg player if you want. I'm not sure if a Terran actually gets their Reaper across fast enough for this to really be a problem. I've never had a problem going hatch gas pool against anyone, I guess. But this is a nice little safety net if you want to use it against another Zerg player or against someone that you might be aggressive early against you. And as a side note, you get your third queen out also, but which will end up probably injecting a base or making a creep tumor over here. But your first queen always injects your main. You can send it down there. Your second queen will either inject the expansion or make a creep tumor, whichever you prefer. When I made these, I preferred to make a creep tumor. So that's that build. Like I said, main point, you don't have to micromanage your workers and your base while your opponent is free attacking you, because you will have defending units. So it's safe, it's good. And that's that. Pretty painless, pretty easy, just a basic overview of build orders, how you can read them, how you read guides to use them. I've seen that question come across forums quite a bit, so figured it'd be worth just addressing real quick. And just kind of my take on build orders and openers, just what they are and how you can transition out of them and how you don't have to feel constrained by a certain build order. It's there to give you some focus and guide you, but you should always be looking at the information in the game, what the game state is, and deciding if you need to transition away from that build or what you need to do to be in your best possible position at that point in time. So, if you watched the whole video, thank you very much. I appreciate you. If you liked the video, feel free to hit the like button and let me know if there are any particular topics or builds or anything that you would like me to cover or look at a little more in the future. I would love to do that. And if you didn't like the video, dislike button's down there as well. Throw your constructive criticism my way and I'll make sure to take a look at it. So, until the next video, I've been your dad. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.